Greetings and welcome to the Healthy Sales Chick Show. I am Nancy White, the host of this show, and here we love to talk about our healthy mind, our body, and our spirit. And we need to nurture all three every single day, or one of those areas are going to start letting us know about it. And as my dear friend and founder of Win Win Women TV always says, and it's Paula Fellingham, by the way, we welcome you with open arms and open hearts. I have a question for you. Do you feel like your cells are happy and healthy from head to toe? They just might need a little refreshing makeover. Well, here we love to have amazing guests and talk about all those ways to nurture that mind, that body, and that spirit. And yes, that does affect our cells too. So we've got a beautiful lady with us, Tanyka and Tanyka Abbott. We are so grateful that you have agreed to come and be with us and share some of your wisdom and experience.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit this evening, and Tanika is a psychotherapist and a coach. That means she really knows about what's going on inside your brain and everything else that associates with that. But we're going to be talking about overcoming trauma. And yes, there are so many different ways that our bodies and our lives go through trauma. It's just not a car accident. But we're going to decide and hear some more things about ways that Tenica can help us with that. We're going to talk about healthy relationships, overcoming trauma, and boundaries. Yes, that has a lot to do with different types of trauma. And we're going to find out ways how this does impact our spiritual health, our bodies, and our minds. But Tanyka Abbott is a psychotherapist and a coach, like I said, with an expertise in sexual and relational trauma with church leadership, spouses, and women in business. And in 2007, she founded Behind the Veil Consultations, and she is been come to known as a private Christian counseling practice, which is very rare in this day and time. But in 2014, she founded Behind the Veil Ministries, LLC, a ministry dedicated to providing workshops, seminars, and pastoral counseling to pastors and spouses, and also in church leadership that are also dealing with infidelity, sexual addiction, etc. But in 2016, she and her husband, Derek, co-founded Live on Purpose. Yeah, Live on Purpose, but it's Live on Purpose, LLC, a coaching practice, and it's currently right now on standby, but probably to be revamped soon. She served as a senior director of clinical services for a nonprofit organization managing over $1.5 million budget. That's a lot of money to make sure you know what's going where and what it's being used for. In September 2022, she established Renewing Hope, HOPE Inc. It's a nonprofit organization slated to launch in the summer of 2023. So that we'll have to find out more about that too. She's a proud wife and mother. And in February, she married the perfect man, Derek Abbott. And again, together they have four children: Cheyenne, Codwin, Brendan, and Tiara. She holds a master's of social work degree from Howard University and a bachelor of science degree in criminal justice from Westchester University. She's currently working on a doctorate of psychology and behavioral health. And also, I just have to tell you, this woman is so smart, but she has such grace and just etiquette that I just love talking with her because she's got all this incredible, valuable information that she uses again to make a difference, especially in healing. So I could go on and on and on about her credentials, but we want to talk with her. So welcome again, Tanika. And I would love to hear what you would love to tell us about what has brought you to this very moment in life that has guided you to where you are today using these gifts and talents.
Well, thank you again, Nancy. It's a pleasure to be here with you and to your audience. I just say thank you for this opportunity. It's really been a couple of things that have brought me to this place in life. Number one, I experienced trauma. trauma in my childhood, trauma in my early adulthood, and I'm a Christian. I'm a believer of God, and I am a Christian business owner. Again, as you stated, I do have a private practice, a counseling practice, and I firmly believe the word of God when he said that nothing would be wasted. He would use everything for our good and for his glory. And the traumas that I experienced is what brought me to today. Being abused as a child, dealing with relational trauma in my freshman year of college by a minister, and so which also led to some spiritual trauma. So it is the traumas and God walking me through that, dealing with my soul and healing my soul and attending to my spirit. And then from a natural perspective, putting me in the path of good Christian therapists and good Christian coaches to help heal me and to make sure that I was not only healed, but healthy and whole from those traumas. So that's what brought me to today.
Wow. And I just love healthy and whole and well. And it's something, I'm sorry that you went through all that, but just like you said, you think that everything gets used, every little bit. Um, but it's interesting that you've gone through all that too. And in this life, we have to continually tweak and maintain because there's going to be more things that come against us in this life. And you've learned how to deal with it in a healthy way. And I was sharing with somebody today, I said, yeah, and being a believer, we're not perfect. I said, and we get to choose how long we want to stay bent out of shape about something or stew about it. And so, I think that's when you find those good, healthy ways like you share and you guide people into, Seneca, that's just so important. So when you talk about healthy relationships, that could be, oh my gosh, interpreted in so many different ways. So how do you explain or describe a healthy relationship?
In its totality, a healthy relationship is a relationship in which both individuals or both parties are not 50-50. They are 100-100. They are give. They are give some more, not take. It is
Mhm.
give. There is mutual respect. There is mutual understanding. There is support. There is conflict in healthy relationships, but the conflict leads to resolution. And that comes about as communicating. That is what a healthy relationship is, where both individuals are thriving. Doesn't mean that one won't be hurt. Doesn't mean that one won't do something that either disappoints or frustrates. I'm married. And so I know that there are some things that I can do that might frustrate my husband. There are some things that he does that I know frustrates me. But in those frustrations, what we do is we learn how to talk about them. We learn how to resolve them. We don't run from conflict. That is what
Would,
a
would
healthy
you would
relationship
you
looks like.
repeat that one more time because that is so important? We don't what?
We don't run from conflict.
Mhm.
We run towards it so that we
Mhm.
can resolve it.
I know because there's so many things, especially women, we stuff our emotions, and and then we carry them in our hips and thighs. So that's one of the things that I've loved about holy yoga over the years is doing some practices that release some of those energies and emotions. Because again, if we stuff things, it's going to come out or have repercussions in one way or another.
Absolutely. I've been a therapist for, Lord, I'm going to age myself, but that's okay. It's been
Okay.
over 25 years
Mhm.
that I have been a therapist, and I specialize in trauma. And there's a book that I love. It's called The Body Keeps Score. And it does. When we go through a traumatic experience, we can store the impact of that trauma in our soul, where our mind, our will, and our emotions dwell. We can store it in our head. So we wonder why we're always getting these tension headaches. We can store it in our shoulders. We can store it in our back. We can store it in our stomach. And so when we don't deal with, when we don't resolve trauma, it comes out in many ways. It also comes out in our relationships. Share with individuals that I counsel and even coach. And one of the things that they say is, I keep dating the same person with a different face because we have not dealt with the relational trauma
Mhm.
that we have experienced. And the other thing is trauma is not always something that has to do with being hit. We think about, domestic violence or intimate partner violence where we can see the bruising, we can see the trauma to the bodies. But what about those internal wounds that cause the trauma? They're not so easily seen with the naked eye, but they're seen through our behaviors. They're seen through our beliefs, through our mindset. And this is why it's important that we deal with the trauma in our lives.
Absolutely. And an area too that being mindful is that if we don't deal with it, then we can pass some of that on to the next generation without knowing it. And just,
Absolutely.
and just making sure, we're always releasing to receive. But there's times, Tenica, that you just know that you can't do it on your own. So what's a symptom or what's a sign, just like you said, that you know that you haven't dealt with something on your own and you may need to have somebody come alongside to guide?
Now, I'm going to use this word. Sometimes I like this word and sometimes I don't. The word is trigger.
Trigger. Mhm.
Trigger. Triggers are something, and it could be a song, it could be a word, it could be an area, a place, or an environment where when we experience it, it takes us back to a past event. And it causes us to think a certain way, causes us to feel a certain way. For example, when I was having to work through some of my relational trauma, there was a particular song that would come on. And every time I heard this song, I would just get really, really angry.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until I went to a therapist to deal with some other stuff, because sometimes that's what we do. We go to a therapist or a coach for one thing, and we're dealing with what presents itself and not the root. And
Mhm.
this therapist helped me realize that the root was trauma. It was my trigger. And my trigger was that music. And so what helps us to understand when we need to seek some assistance could be you were triggered. Or you might find yourself, especially when we're dealing with relational trauma, you might find yourself dating the same person with a different face. Well, John didn't talk really nice to me, and now I'm dating Rick. And Rick doesn't talk nice to me either. And I left Rick alone, and now I'm talking to Barry, and Barry does and says the same things. And I'm like, wait a minute, are you Rick or are you Barry? John, who are you? This is an indicator that, yeah, we may need to seek some attention. Also, when we're avoiding things. If I'm avoiding going to particular places, if I'm avoiding being around certain individuals, sometimes dates
Mhm.
can be something that lets us know we have some unresolved issues or some unresolved trauma.
Mhm. I know sometimes, when we've experienced, we call it deja vu, and all of a sudden you have that flashback and you have that, you can still, whatever it is, that same emotion, those feelings and things that causes it. Is that similar to having a trigger?
It is. It's like I've been here before
Hmm.
because your mind knows it because it's
Hmm.
going back and it's
Hmm.
sensing. And sometimes our subconscious is what's bringing up that awareness. So
Hmm.
it can be similar to the deja vu experience.
Deja
And
vu.
please pardon me. I'll make up words in a minute.
You go
So
right ahead, make up any word you want to. So, when you were talking about, the things that people, again, they want to not talk about those things and ignore. And I know that you have seen some over the 25 years, some results of that. And it's like, I think with blended families, when you bring in blended families, you're bringing in rejection from both sides. Somebody has gone through rejection, whether it's divorce or death or whatever, you know, and then if you can help work with those blended families at that time, instead of having to deal with, um, actions that aren't pleasing, or just, children, you just whatever it is acting out. But if you can do it and help them, everybody benefits. The home
Yes.
and everything is more peaceful. The children will probably not have to go through as much therapy when they grow up. So, it can be really saving a lot financially, but the heartache, I think that's one of the things um, that people don't realize too, with so many blended families that we have, that, it comes with some baggage.
Yes. I'm part of a blended family. My husband and I got married 3 weeks before the nation shut down in 2020.
Well, that was a long honeymoon. I
Yeah,
know.
yes, yes, it certainly was. And, again, we are a blended family, and there were some things that we had to work out. Now, our 3 oldest children were already adults and out of the home. So our youngest was when let's see, when we got married, she was 15 going on 16.
Mhm.
Yes. And there were things that we had to work out. I said in healthy relationships, everybody thrives. Initially, we weren't thriving
Mhm.
because we had expectations, and we all come into relationships with expectations. But we find out that unresolved expectations are 9 times out of 10 expectations that were never communicated.
Yeah.
And so we had to learn how to talk. We had to learn each other's language. I share with couples that I work with, you each come with your own language.
Mhm.
And then the family unit in which you were a part of has another language. So that's your dialect. And we have to learn each other's dialect so that we can communicate in healthy ways. We can gain understanding. Well, why don't you ever close the cupboards?
I know.
Why do you let the trash overflow?
Mhm.
You know, I thought that every night we were going to engage in pillow talk. If we don't have those conversations, rather, to deal with our expectations,
Mhm.
communicate them, and then work through them and come to consensus.
That is huge to talk to about with young people before they get married, or anybody at any time. Because I can remember, in my early 20s, with my boyfriend or whatever, and I'm saying, well, if he doesn't know, I'm not going to tell him, and I'm sitting there going, well, how? He's a guy. And later on in life, I'm sitting there going, they don't know. It's like, you know, if he, just, if he's not going to treat me this way or do this or whatever, if you've never communicated, and how unfair that is to put that
Yes.
expectation on somebody else because they're not measuring up to the way you think they should be measuring up if they are clueless.
Yes. And then for
Mhm.
those who have been married for years, my parents were married for 58 years before my mother passed away.
Oh,
And she would say to me all the time, I'm still learning new stuff about your dad.
mhm.
Married 58 years, you're still learning new stuff? Absolutely. And then with her learning new things, what that showed me was that number one, you need to be in a posture of wanting to learn. And then it's not a thing of, well, I've been married to him for 57 years, so he should automatically know this, or she should. No, no, God is the only one who is all knowing.
Mhm.
We are not, no matter how much we might want to be. We are not.
And we're always evolving. We've never been this
Yes.
age before, and so we're learning, but we love it. Like when your mother and my mother would give us, some hints and some guidance and some
Mhm.
suggestions of things, how to make life go smoother. We can either do it ourselves, be stubborn, and just, go, I'm just going to do it my way. Well, and you hear that, well, how's that working for you? Well, it hasn't come to fruition yet, but I bet it's coming to fruition. It's like,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, how do you suggest for people to take those first steps to overcome trauma?
The first thing is to recognize that it is okay that you are feeling what you are feeling.
Mhm.
When you experience something traumatic, whether it's the loss of a job, whether it's the loss of a loved one, whether it's your home was repossessed, or even a divorce, or some kind of other relational trauma, when you experience it, you are going to feel things. You are going to feel sadness. You're going to feel anger. You're going to feel hurt. You're going to feel fear. It is a normal response to the experience that you are having. And recognize it may not feel okay, but it will be okay. You've got to give yourself grace and permission to feel it. Then the second thing is don't listen to what that traumatic emotion is telling you. Our emotions will talk to us. They will only tell us things that confirm what we're feeling. Anger will never tell you that you can let go of it. Anger will
Mhm.
always remind you of additional reasons to get angrier. So you have to recognize that even though your emotion is talking, there is another emotion you can feel. And you give yourself permission to do that. You also give yourself permission to seek help, seek support. I tell individuals all the time when they call, especially and say, "Well, I never thought I was going to need counseling or therapy." Well, you know what? I like to look at counseling or therapy as means of support. It's
Yeah.
the opportunity for you to come and have engaging conversations to learn something from a different perspective so that you're seeing things from more than just your lens or the lens of the traumatic experience. You've
Let me go
also
back
got
1 minute,
Mhm.
because when you said you speak to the emotions, like for anger or something that has done, or we expected somebody to do something more and they just don't because they choose not to.
You
So,
know, everybody has opportunities.
mhm,
We can make a request of our spouse, of our child, adult, or teenager. They're going to choose whether or
mhm,
not they want to do it. God gives us choice.
yeah,
Choose ye this day whom you will serve. He gives us choice. We have to recognize that everybody, including us, has a choice.
mhm,
And then we get to respond to that choice. That's where
mhm,
boundaries come in
yeah,
with relationships and even with seeking help. You can choose. Now, sometimes I've heard individuals say, "Well, I tried it once and it didn't work for me." Did you have the right therapist or did you have the right coach? I'm going to tell you, I'm a therapist and I'm a coach, but I'm not everybody's therapist and I'm not everybody's coach
mm,
because I'm not meant to work with everybody. And it is a process.
yeah,
And so you might have to ask some questions of that therapist or of that coach. How long have you been dealing with this particular experience that I'm having? If it's relational trauma, or if it's work trauma, if it's spiritual trauma, how much education or how much experience, how many people have you worked with? What has their experiences been like? You have to ask questions to find the right coach. And we do this all the time. When we're looking for a job, we don't apply for every job that's out there.
mhm,
We look for the qualifications. We look to make sure this is going to be a give in the relationship.
mhm.
Same thing with seeking support.
That is some great advice. Great advice. So when you talk about boundaries, I think sometimes people don't realize boundaries are so protective, because a lot of times we give other people permission to have power over us when just like you were talking about, when we are not releasing the emotions that are caused between the conflict or whatever. So, how much permission do you want to give somebody else to have power over you?
That
So,
is
when
so
you're
true.
talking about boundaries, what are some guidelines and some things that you suggest to people as far as
Well,
setting up those
first,
gates? Mhm,
first, recognize this. A boundary is a line of demarcation. It
mhm,
tells you what you are responsible for, where you start, and where you end, what you're not responsible for. And then also recognizing that boundaries, this is where people can sometimes get caught up with boundaries because I tried it and it didn't work. I set a boundary. No, you made a demand, and a demand is not a boundary. This is what a boundary looks like. I really enjoy talking to you on the phone, but I don't enjoy gossiping. So
mhm,
if we're talking on the phone and you begin to gossip, I'm going to tell you one time, this is not a part of the conversation I want. And if you continue it, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to tell you, I've enjoyed talking to you, but now I'm going to hang up because I do not want to gossip. And then I hang up. I've communicated what the expectation is. I've communicated what the consequence is if you don't follow. the expectation. And then I release myself of whatever happens. The person's going to feel the way that they feel about the boundary. Their emotion is their responsibility. It is not yours. In boundaries, your responsibility is to number one, understand what the boundary needs to be. Number two, communicate it. Number three, you respect it. The other person has a choice to respect it or not. What really matters is what you do, how you respect it, how you enforce the boundary. The other person will feel what they feel, and that's on them to work out.
And that's really challenging, especially in families and relationships when you've got an overbearing parent or somebody is, a sibling that or narcissist or somebody that is in that, but setting up those boundaries and then sticking to it and
Yeah.
communicating just like you said and enforcing that.
And they can be challenging. I encourage individuals to recognize this. The boundary is really for you, not the other person. The boundary is what's going to keep you healthy. It's what's going to keep you spiritually, emotionally, and physically safe. The boundary is for you. It is not for their comfort. It is for your health.
That is awesome. People need to listen to that and hear that one more time. The boundary is for
You. Yes, it is for you.
because we cannot control anybody else and what their choices are or anything. The boundary is for our protection. Well, you do think about it too, even for when the shepherds were taking care of sheep or anybody, that's why you've got the fences and that's why you've got to take care of what's inside it.
Yeah, that's that line of demarcation. When you think about the road, you've got those two solid white lines, and then you've got the two yellow lines in the middle that lets you know which direction you're supposed to go in. And when you see a car veering on the other side, you have an opportunity.
Mhm,
You can move over because the boundary is for your health, for
mhm.
your safety.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah,
boundaries aren't easy. They're
mhm,
not, but they're necessary.
yeah. They are very much so, especially if you want to continually grow and and have that inner peace too. Because how many women feel guilty about, having to put boundaries around when they're children? I mean, and it's for their safety, but and that's when um sometimes children can get their way or
Mhm.
whatever, or the parent is bribing them with something. And so not having the boundaries set up and having that clear understanding.
Boundaries help us mature
Hmm.
and they teach us delayed gratification sometimes.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
knew our time was going to fly. Danica, it's just it's just so much information, things, and we may have to have another episode, exciting next episode. But so, anything else that comes to your heart or mind that just keeps coming up that you would just love to share with our audience? Any kind of tips or information?
If you have experienced any kind of trauma, I want to encourage you reach out. And if you're not sure, exactly how I'm supposed to deal with it, it's okay. You don't have to have all the answers. Just reach out to get the support, to get the guidance. Don't be afraid. Recognize you're not the only one who needs support sometimes, and it is absolutely okay. Jesus sought support. That's why he asked three of the disciples to come into the garden with him.
Yeah, it is so fantastic. So, what is coming up next for you? What are you doing? And you've got a lot of different things because you'd mentioned your journaling and some other things that you also do. But what's something
Yes.
that's coming up for you?
Well, I'm attending a women's conference this weekend, and I'm having an opportunity to do some vending with my journals that I make. In September, I will actually be in Kentucky for a women's conference. We're talking about spiritual, emotional, physical, and relational and mental health
Hmm.
wellness for Christian women who are also business owners. So those are two things I have coming up. I'm in the process of writing a book. Um, and I'm like, Lord, you got to help me with this because you told me to do it and I didn't want to. So
but you're being obedient.
But
Yes.
I am obedient because I'm gonna do
Mhm.
it one way or the other. I can do it voluntarily or involuntarily. I prefer voluntary.
Go with the flow,
It
flow
works
with
better.
ease, flow with ease. And so how can people get in touch with you? What's the easiest way?
The best way to get in touch with me right now, my counseling website is being revamped, so it's down. My coaching website is TanykaAbbott.com. That's one way you can get a hold of me. Or you can also email me at tanika@btvconsultations.com.
Wow, that is so fantastic. And again, thank you so much for just sharing us just a little glimpse of what you were doing to make other people's lives enhanced more lovely while they're still here. And just to go through those healing processes and pass that on to the next generations too. And I invite anyone to please check out the other Win-Win Women TV shows. We've got a variety of hosts, and they're here to encourage, inspire, and educate you. And come back and join us next Wednesday with the Healthy Sales Chick Show. And if you'd like to get in touch with me, go to my website, thehealthysaleschick.com. I would love to hear what you're doing for your healthy lifestyle. And just if there's any areas that you might need to have a little tweak or suggestion, would love to share with you from my 30 plus years of experience. Thank you again, Tanyka. That just, I'm so grateful for what you're doing and the difference that you're making.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Mm.